Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Think Suburbia, the Suburban Virginia Republican Coalition's podcast, the video version. We're really excited to be doing these Zoom podcasts. They're really working out nicely, and I'm so happy that you've joined us today. I'm Mike Ginsberg. I am one of the hosts of the podcast.
Hi, I'm Jill Cook. I'm one of the co-founders of SUVGOP and the co-host of the podcast. And I want to invite you all to welcome our guest today, Mike Schoelwer, who is a candidate for the Republican Party of Virginia Chair position. Also is the Lancaster County Republican Committee Chairman as we speak. So welcome, Mike.
Well, thank you for having me. And let me say too, thank you for the great work that SUVGOP does. You guys have done some pretty groundbreaking stuff, and thank you for the innovation. It's something we really need as a party.
Thank you. We our goal is to, build the party back up, and if we can find ways to do that, we're happy. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so jumping right into it. So tell us a little bit about your background, both professionally and in the political arena. How did you get involved in politics?
Well, I've always been Republican oriented. But because of 39 years of federal service under the Hatch Act, I couldn't be an active participant. My formative professional years, I think, were in the Marine Corps. I joined the Marine Corps right out of college, young infantry officer. I remember going to officer candidate school. My first morning, having a gunnery sergeant with 5 rows of ribbons on there, telling me, candidates, you got 8 weeks to show me you got what it takes to lead me in combat. And I thought, oh my God, what did you get yourself into?
A little intimidating, right? Yeah.
40% of us finished. And
Wow.
And that started off just an incredible experience for me. It's been a career. The Marine Corps taught me to always seek excellence, total excellence in everything. The Marine Corps also taught me that the mission was important, more important than I was. And frankly, I was expendable, but the mission had to get accomplished. And the Marine Corps also taught me that nobody gets left behind, that the true leaders bring their people with them, that you're there to serve. You're not there to be pampered or not be fawned on. And frankly, you lead from the front. You're the first up in the morning. You're the last one to bed at night. You're the one that walks the lines. You're the last one to eat. But you're responsible for everything your unit does or fails to do. And that was a really important lesson for a young man to learn. And frankly, the guys that I had as mentors early on in the Marine Corps, my first mentor in the Marine Corps climbed Mount Soros and planted the flag in 1944,
Oh, wow.
45.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty memorial.
He was on the first patrol up, the one that put up the little flag.
Wow.
Right. Not the staged photo.
Exactly. They paved the way for the guys that brought up the stage photo. One of my first NCOs had gone ashore in the second wave at Incheon in the Korean War. My first company commander, Silver Star winner in Vietnam, Battalion XO, Navy Cross. I mean, these guys are veterans of Way City and Khe Sanh, and they really imbued us with a sense of mission, a sense of purpose, but also an unrelenting demand for excellence in everything we did. I wasn't sure. I did that for 13 years, worked with great people. I mean, I loved the Marine Corps as an institution and still do. But I wasn't sure that I was doing enough for my country at that point. And so that's how I ended up going to the CIA. And I did 28 years in the Central Intelligence Agency in the Directorate of Operations, most of it overseas, most of it in the Near East, 3 war zone tours. That's just where all the fur came from. My beard used to be quite a bit longer. So,
Not a COVID beard, is it? It's not just a COVID beard.
No. I went feral in 2002 when I first toured Afghanistan.
Okay.
And actually my beard is quite a bit shorter now. But the things that I really learned in the CIA, they would throw us out into ambiguous situations and quite often very dangerous situations. And they expected us to do our jobs. And quite frankly, if you ask too many questions, the leadership would say, we obviously sent the wrong person. And not many people realize it, but we really went where other people couldn't go and did what other people couldn't. And the only reason we could do that was because, frankly, I worked with the best in the world. And, you know, not many people know it, but I was in Washington on 9/11. I was in between assignments in the Middle East. And not many people know it, but we launched our first team into Afghanistan on 17 September, 6 days later.
Mm. Wow.
And it was only shortly thereafter that I went. But you really learn that, you know, your job is to lay awake at night worrying about the safety and the security of the United States.
Right.
And I used to walk around my office at the end of the day and I would ask my young officers, you know, what have you done for your country today? And they could tell me. It wasn't without loss. You know, if you go to CIA headquarters, there's the entrance that you always see in the movies, which is a big gray medallion of the agency. And on the left wall, as you go in, is a statue of General Donovan. And a single star, which represents all the OSS officers that were lost in the war. And over on the other wall is what they call the Wall of Honor, which has a star up there for every agency officer who lost their life in the line of duty.
Wow.
And during my 28 years in the agency, we added 72 stars. All of those were friends of mine. All those were colleagues, some friends, and 2 of them I shipped on myself. And through it, I really learned, though, the dedication to mission, the unrelenting demand for excellence, because we were involved in making national policy. And when it was not the sort of thing that you could drop glass balls on. But you also learned that you had to go into ambiguous situations, work, decide what needed to be done, in many cases form coalitions with other organizations and people on the ground and build teams. And that was how we functioned, especially in the war zones. I retired in 2014. We moved to Lancaster County. And that was when I became an active participant in the Republican Party and was a member for 2 years and became chairman for the last 3. But frankly, a lot of the lessons that I learned in the CIA and in the Marine Corps were really applicable to what I'm doing right now in the RPV. That's one of the reasons I look at the RPV as a structure, and I can see right now where the weaknesses are. And I can see, based on my experiences, running big organizations, where I think the RPV really needs to improve, to strengthen, and it's those things that I'd like to bring to the discussion. I mean, and frankly, I am every bit as convinced that the RPV is as critical to the health and safety of the United States as any other organization I've been in. Because frankly, when you look at it, we have real problems in Richmond right now. And the RPV is the one organization that can stop it. We're the one organization that can bring order back to the chaos. And we must succeed. Virginia needs us to succeed. So,
no, that's no, that's very
that's
true.
how I came to work.
No, that's great. That's great. I mean, maybe, it sort of leads us, a natural segue into, maybe tell us a little bit about, why you're running for chair, and maybe expound a little bit on those weaknesses and how you would address them.
Well, I had not really planned on running, but at the advance last year, a number of other unit chiefs, unit chairmen came up to me, and they knew my background, and they knew what I could do, and they asked me to look seriously at whether or not I could serve a ticket on the chairmanship, because we all knew the stakes. So I took a good hard look at it. I was kind of surprised. A formative experience was at the advance. I remember asking 10 different people, so what's the RPV do? And I got 10 different answers. And I thought, for $1 million a year organization, if you can tell me in 1 or 2 sentences what you do, that's a problem. So I went up to talk to Morton Blackwell. I figured the first thing I needed to do is go see the Sheikh of the tribe and go talk to him and explain to him what I wanted to do. And that really cemented in my mind that I understood what the weaknesses were. I knew the skill sets that I could bring to it. I knew the stakes. It was a worthy fight. And that's why I decided to get in. On the technicalities side of it, I think that the RPV has 3 weaknesses right now. 3 areas that I'd like to strengthen to get us back into the win column. First of all, I think the chairman has lost touch with the committees. I see a real absence of communications between the chairman's office and the local committees. And to me, the local committees are the heart and soul of the GOP. That's where everything gets done. That's where we find candidates to run. That's where we recruit new voters. And nobody is going to know the community better than the local committees. And the fact that nobody from Richmond has ever come out to ask them what's their situation, I find really telling. You know, old adage in the Marine Corps, commanders inspect what they value. And if they don't value it, they don't inspect it. Well, that's the signal that answers the contact sends. And I think the fact that we failed to run candidates in 27 legislative districts and 10 state Senate districts was a real symptom of that. But if we go even further, if we could even bore down on that a little bit, that's 27 districts. That's about 40 to 45 counties in which we're not making sure we have people on the ballot. And to me, that's a real strategic weakness. Those county races, that's where we train candidates. That's where we build those networks. That's where we get good people to come into the party. That's where we tap into new communities that we haven't served yet. And that's the strategic depth of the RPV. And we let that go fallow at our own peril.
I just was going to follow up and say, you know, one of the things that, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that is something that has been sort of near and dear to the SUVGOP's heart. And one of the things that, you know, a lot of people have talked about, you know, a lot of races went uncontested. How would you recommend that we recruit new candidates to run in these races? Where are we going to get those candidates, and what role can RPV play in that process?
And may I just throw something in there?
Sure, yeah.
While you think about answering that question, Mike, Mike and I, well, Mike especially, lived in a very, very, very blue district, and I live and was a chairman of a district that became parts very, very blue. You could not talk. We ran people several years ago, and when they get totally crushed, it's very hard for those around that we might recruit to say, do I want to go through that again? We are in, you know, there are parts of this that there are 2080 districts, and that we'd like to hear your strategy for recruiting, but believe we try to convince people, and they look at what happened, and there has to be a new way to convince them. So if you have something to share, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, and particularly, you know, what role can RPV play in all? Yeah, no, very good. Yeah,
you know, I hear exactly what you're saying, Joel, and I'm sure that you probably felt like you were behind the lines in a lot of cases.
Oh yeah, always, yes.
It has its moments.
And it's clear that there's going to be some districts that it just doesn't matter what we do. We can hit it around the margins, but we're not going to prevail. And even the Democrats, I think there were 9 districts they didn't bother to run anybody in. You know, I get that. But 27 are blue districts, I don't believe it. You know, there was one, 95th, Newport News. C.A. Price won that with 11,000 votes. There's 50,000 votes in a district, and she won with 20%. Roanoke, Sam Razul, he won with 10,000 votes out of 50,000. And it's districts like that, and especially there's 5 districts right now that we lost by less than 2% of the vote. I think we could easily take those back, and frankly, that's going to get us control back of the General Assembly. That's where we need to focus. And the issue that I would like to see, and that's just strategic targeting. You know, frankly, I hate to bring some military terminology into that, but that's figuring out where we can do have the most impact with the greatest, with the least expenditure of resources, frankly.
Right.
And I think in those swing districts, we can have an immediate effect. The rest of it is, I think there's a lot of districts that when we didn't run candidates, frankly, we disenfranchised hundreds of thousands of Republicans. I have talked many places I've been where people said, I had nobody to vote for. I would have come out to vote. I had nobody to vote for. And I think in those places where we can make a difference, if we start getting good candidates up for county supervisor, for Commonwealth's attorneys, for school board, that will bring new candidates in, and they will bring their networks of people with them. And I think that will help rebuild that base of the party, which we've allowed to go fallow over the last 5 years. And that's what the RPV used to do. Under Vance Wilkins, that's what we did. Under Governor Byrd, that was exactly the model, and it worked. So I'm not sure why we backed away from it. And so I guess in a lot of ways, I'm saying we need to go back to the future, you know?
Good point. However, we did run into the juggernaut called George Soros up here in the Commonwealth.
Right.
The Commonwealth's attorney in Fairfax and Arlington County, and that was just an effort in futility. And we had the fabulous candidates, and one was even an independent, and just got crushed. So that's an excellent point. But we have to find the people that will sacrifice themselves to do that.
That's a great point. I guess another. Go ahead, Mike.
If we get people to run in those districts, that's also where they learn how to run a campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And I would never encourage anybody to stand up and take a spear in the chest, but at least not for that perspective. But I would tell people that if you feel strongly enough, if you agree with the principles of the Republican Party, if you're willing to stand up and be criticized for saying the right things, then you could do us a great service.
Yeah.
And I'd also like to get more cooperation between the counties and the committees, because when we run somebody for a supervisor, I would like to have a Republican supervisor in the next county over come in and start being a mentor. When we have people run for the legislative districts, I'd want to get some of the old lions to come back in and mentor these people on campaigning and on the issues and just what it takes to actually serve in the House of Delegates. I think there's all sorts of untapped resources there that we could tap into that we're not doing that right now.
That's a great point.
It's lying there. It's just there to be picked up.
No, that's a great point. Yeah, I know one of our it's funny, in 2018, we put out our report. One of the recommendations we had in there was a mentorship program like that to nurture, new blood with experienced old hands. So that's great. That's great.
We have our build the bench too. We have our build the bench theme.
Build the bench. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mike, if somebody fails once but learns, we want them to.
It's not failure. It's learning.
Building.
And off. Frank Wolf. It took him 3 races before he was elected to Congress. So these things.
I know very few politicians that run. I know very few politicians that win in their first race.
Right.
I mean, Dave Brett.
Right.
Scott Taylor, Abraham Lincoln. Plus his first 3 races.
Right. That's right.
But that's where you learn. That's where you build your networks, and that's where people get to know you. And frankly, what I'd like to do, I'd like to take some of the congressional candidates that we had up in your area that didn't get selected. I think they're good, strong candidates.
Yeah.
And we should be putting up for the legislative district. We should be putting up for the county offices. I mean, Melissa Baldwin.
School board. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Heavy winner in her district. Yeah. So even if you don't get even if you don't win on the first bite at the apple, success is a lousy teacher. So,
right.
And I think we need to encourage that. I don't think you recruit good candidates. I think you grow them.
Right.
And that's the piece that we're kind of missing right now. I don't understand why we don't have the Jennifer Byler Institute anymore.
Right.
That would seem to me just a strategic resource that we let go fallow.
Right.
And that's an aspect of running the candidates. I think we not only have to go out and recruit candidates, and frankly, I'm so concerned about 2021 already.
Yep.
When you think about it, elections November 2021, primaries are going to be in June, filings are going to be in March. People are going to start collecting petitions in January. That's only 6 months away.
Believe me, there's a lot of people that are interested already.
Oh yeah, no, but you're exactly right to be thinking along those lines. I mean, if you start in January, you're starting too late.
Exactly. We have people.
Well, and I've started it. Mm-hmm. I've started an effort with a group of concerned citizens to go out and recruit candidates in a lot of these areas. And we've found one for the 85th. And I've been talking to some of the precinct chiefs, the ministerial chiefs up in your area, because again, nobody's going to know the area better than they do. And tell me what you're looking for, what kind of communities we can tap into. And I have people that can do the kind of research, the executive committee, headhunting research, that we can come up with lists of candidates for you to go talk to. And basically really improve the prospects. And every time you the committee chief leaves house to go talk to somebody else, they've got a high probability of a shot. It's not just trolling.
Right.
It's, let me give you a focus list that could give you a high percentage chance of success every time you go out the door.
Right.
That's something I think that we could be doing.
Right.
Something else we should be doing is helping train the candidates initially afterwards and do that mentoring program. But you know what I'd like to do too? I would really like to see the college Republicans help us out with marketing surveys so that we get some of these counties, key counties that we really want to bore down into, or complicated counties like where you all live. Can these guys start crunching census data? Can they be looking at social media data?
Sure
And
they
can they be,
Right.
and can they, be in a structured way, be looking at what we used to call the human terrain? What on the business side we call a marketing survey, and be able to come to your committee and say, this is what we find in your community. Have you considered the Korean American community? Have you talked to these guys in the Filipino American community? Have you talked to this Second Amendment group? And you may well know a lot of it, but they may open up new surveys for you as well, new avenues and things that they had looked at. But and my experience in exercises like that too is it becomes a dialogue where they come in and present information. You tell them, give them more granularity. They go back and they beast it again, and they come back with even better results. And it really becomes a
yes, absolutely.
a
I
dialogue.
think they have the enthusiasm. They have to have a seat at the table, and that will be another question we get to later. But I just want to interject that we actually, SUVGOP we have a thing called Geopolitics 101, and we have had training sessions for potential and active and current candidates, and they were very well attended. We are planning another one very shortly, and others, not the only ones that have done that, but there are people that have had training. FCR's, Fairfax County Republicans, used to have a training for people interested in running, and a really nice structured training program to answer all their questions, like what is involved, where will I get help? So that's an excellent idea. We're implementing it, but I think you're right. We need to implement it on a statewide scale. Exactly.
Sure.
Exactly.
Sure.
With all of these issues, frankly, when I go in and talk to these committees, I look at a committee with 50 people. And frankly, that's about 250 years of political experience. And I find it hard to believe that there's any problem out there that we can't think our way out of.
Right.
But we have to work together.
Yeah, one of the biggest problems that we face, and this is really sort of the thing that SUVGOP is focused on, because, and frankly, it's not just a Virginia problem, it's a national problem to some degree, and that is the question of the suburban voter.
Yeah.
You hear a lot about, the suburbs are leaving the Republican Party, and, the results in Virginia certainly bear that out to some degree. I mean, the 2018, the Congress people that we lost, all came from suburban areas, whether it's Richmond or Northern Virginia or Tidewater. And you even see it in ruby red states like Texas, where, the suburbs of Houston, the suburbs of Dallas, the suburbs of San Antonio, Austin, are changing that state in ways that, affect the future of the party there. How would you approach, as the RPV chair, how would you approach that suburban issue? And how would you, recommend that, the kind of approaches that you would take to win those voters back?
Well, yeah, and let me say too that I'm probably a little bit more optimistic about success than some people.
No, that's good.
We
need optimism.
Well, it's changed so much in the last 10 years. There's nothing we can do. And I guess my question is, when in the last 150 years has Virginia not been changing every decade?
Right.
And we've always adapted in the past. And for 5 years now, I've been going to the advance, and I've been listening to consultants say, well, we need to good contact with the minority communities. We need to go talk to these people. And for 5 years, nobody's ever done it. And I think that at least not on an RPV-wide scale.
Right, it's been done in smaller scales, yeah.
Yeah, and to me, there's two reasons you don't do something. You don't do it because you can't do it, or you don't do it because you won't do it. And obviously, you all are proving it can be done. And I speak fluent Spanish, so I go to Spanish masses all the time, and
Mhm.
I have to be careful out in Herndon because, you know, when this old white guy comes in the middle of the day speaking colloquial Central American Spanish, and I see everybody break out in sweat. And I actually I started telling people, no soy la migra, no soy la migra. I'm not immigration, you know?
Right.
And then I see everybody react. Yeah. Well, then they start calling me Don. So, I mean, he's obviously an educated man. He's obviously distinguished, you know? So, yeah, I'm out there known as Don Miguel. I think it's incredibly important that we come up with a concerted plan to reach into a lot of these communities because, frankly, they share our values.
Yeah.
They're church-oriented, they're family-oriented, especially the Latin Americans, the Central Americans. The gangs prey on them.
They do.
And they want and need the protection of the law. But they've been so traumatized by this democratic propaganda that they're afraid of the police.
They've been cut off. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And frankly, a lot of that is just showing up. It's just being there on a more frequent basis. I spent 7 years in the Islamic world. So, you know, I'm comfortable with Muslim world. And I was talking to the head of the Islamic community out in Fredericksburg. And he and I it was a completely unrelated issue, but as soon as he found out I was a Republican, then boom, we talked 5 minutes about airport issues, and then the next hour was on politics.
Okay.
And I asked him, so what can Republicans do for you? I mean, you know, what would it take? And he said, well, the first thing is we have a tendency to come out one day a year, set up a table at one of their fairs and set up some brochures, and you don't get any traction. And then you say, okay, this is a waste of time. The second is when our candidates do go out and talk to them, it's the month before the election, and it's only because we're asking them to vote for us. And meanwhile, the Democrats have been in there pounding and pounding and pounding away.
Right.
But the contradiction,
Yes.
but the contradiction is that most of these people are business owners.
Right.
You know, they're entrepreneurs, they're small business owners. They're worried about their families. They're worried about going to church. They're worried about the schools. And those are all Republican values. So presence, constant presence, not something you can throw up overnight, really makes a big difference.
Right.
I'll give you an example of what the Commonwealth's attorney did down here. About 40% of Lancaster County is African American. And this county really does show the scars of segregation. And it is two very separate and distinct castes here. Not castes, but social circles.
Sure, yeah.
Our Commonwealth's attorney candidate was interested in the black vote. He's also a musician, guitar player. And so he just started going to the churches for the music, sitting in the back row. And, you know, he kind of stood out. And after services, people would come over and engage him. And folks here are very friendly. And he did run into a little bit of pushback when they found out he was a Republican. But by and large, he got very well received. And as he did it over the course of a couple of months, he would get to know people, and people get to know him. Well, you know, when November rolled around, he took 80% of the African-American vote in this county.
Oh, goodness. Wow.
And again, it was just presence. And that's where we come off the rails. Now, you remember that part I said where, you know, commanders respect what they value? What the RPV can do, I think, is the chairman's office needs to be asking the committees, what programs do you have going on? Mm-hmm. Tell us what you're doing, because that shows command interest.
Right.
And who doesn't like to be recognized for doing a good job? But it also gives the RPV chairman a good sense for what's going on around the state. And if there's some place it's not working, then you pay attention. On those places it is working, then I need to hook you up with the places where it isn't, so you guys can exchange views, exchange information.
Mm-hmm.
That's what networking can do for us.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, I think we're
playing the role of a catalyst like that.
Right. I think, Jill, we probably have time for one more question, and then give Michael a chance to, you know, if there's other issues we haven't touched on. I know that, you know, there's certainly one of the questions that's out there is this party plan amendment. I think that is sort of one of these things that is roiling, or not roiling, but it is a topic of hot discussion within the Republican Party internally. So, Jill, I know that's something that you've given some thought to.
Very near and dear to me, right? Yes.
Yeah, it's something that's sort of near and dear to your heart.
Right. The VFRW, the CRs, the YRs, we work very closely with SUVGOP, but I have always worked closely with them in all my capacities in the Republican Party. And they are a very valued, and they are a very active and very contributory part of the RPV. And the party plan amendment is also there's a lot of misinformation that's being put out about the amendment that I don't want to get into the details, but you can look at the party plan. They're all elected positions that are being looked at reducing. They are absolutely elected. I can tell you that. I can tell you secretary is elected too, even though some literature wasn't, because I have to run for that. So I know that. But these people run duly elected positions, and they work hard for that. And I know this is a subject. We just want to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, I'm shocked to hear this come up. I have to tell you, I'm shocked to hear this.
It's a hot topic. Everybody seems to be talking about it. But no, it's definitely a hot topic, and it's one of the things that I know that a lot of our.
Here's what I think about it.
Yeah.
I think that any organization that has had 10 years of failure needs to look at its operations. I think they really need to seriously scrub it and look for ways to get better. And then, like I said before, say Central, 91 people? There's probably 78.
78.
78, okay.
Depending on congressional, you realize that each district can have, if they go with the presidential candidate or the congressional get extra.
About the bonus seats.
It can be very low or very high depending on how many Republicans we have in office. So.
Right. It
I counted it up on the party plan one time, and I think that's the number I came up with.
It varies.
Okay, that's probably 700 years of political experience in that room. If I get elected chairman, what I want to do is I want to pull together an ad hoc committee of concerned people from State Central Committee and say, take a look top to bottom at what we're doing and propose any changes that need to be made. Now, I think a mistake that that party plan amendment makes is it tries to force State Central organization to mirror the political organization of the state of Virginia. But that's not the way our membership base is organized. Because yes, we do have 11 congressional districts, but as you point out, we have those 3 affiliate organizations who do a tremendous amount of work for the party. And my feeling is, if you're pulling on the oars, you deserve to have a voice in it. And plus the fact, there's all that talent in those organizations.
And all that potential, they're young.
Well, and I don't know, be careful what you ask for, because frankly, I'm going to turn to you as those organizations, and I'm going to be asking you for significant help.
Okay.
No, that's great. That's great.
I think the YRs could be critical in helping us recruit new candidates.
Yep.
And actually give them something to do besides get together once in a while and drink beer. And
we knocked a lot of doors last year for candidates up here in Northern Virginia. We worked with them some of those hot days, knocking doors.
We might have drunk a few beers too, though.
Well, we did that too. Yeah, that too.
Yeah, I'm not being disparaging about the YRs. What I'm talking about is how many communities where we go in and we sit there, we follow Robert's Rules of Orders, and we have our agenda. And at the end of the meeting, we bang the gavel and away leave. And people are, we're about 30 minutes past the end of useful consciousness by the end of the meeting. and I would really like to engage these organizations on substantive actions that could really help the party out and kick it up to the next higher level. Again, there's so much talent in these organizations, and I would really like to harness that for us and bring it online to a greater degree, even more than it is now. And so a roundabout way of answering your question is, the Republican Change Committee needs to defend their own proposal. I do want to take a good hard stare at how we work and what's wrong with the party plan. Is there anything we can improve in there? I'll tell you as a side to that, I think we need to stop calling it the party plan. It's not a plan. It's a series of bylaws. And what we need to do is write a plan. We need a serious campaign plan. To me, the objective would be through November of 2021, which talks about candidate recruitment, which talks about within a 2-sentence statement of what it is we intend to do, and then a paragraph on how we intend to execute it, and then what the measures of effectiveness are, and where the strategic areas we're going to focus on. You know, because if I can define what I want to do, then I can define if we're winning. And if I can't tell you what winning is, if I can't tell you what we're doing, I can't tell you whether or not we're succeeding. And then I would like to take all those things and come up with a statement of the resources required. And to me, that's a plan.
Right.
And then we can go out and execute it.
Okay.
No, that's great. That's great. I mean, I love the idea of, you know, being about action.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, we're all about that here.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that really sounds great. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, go ahead, Jill.
Yeah, I just wanted to, we're getting towards the end. We usually, so we don't keep them more than 20 minutes, but this has been very engaging.
This is a very, very good conversation.
We always ask.
Well, thanks. I really enjoy these conversations.
Yeah.
No, we do
At
too.
the
We
end,
do too.
we save a couple of minutes at the end for to ask what you do for fun when you're not politicking. Is there anything that you enjoy doing that has nothing to do with this?
Well, I'm a private pilot, and so I fly a lot. And I'm a voracious reader. I know what you see behind me is probably about 1/3 of the number of books that I've gone through in the last couple of years.
You and me both. Love it. Yeah.
And I'm my problem
What do you
is
like
I'm
to
too
read?
curious about it. You know, I'm into biographies. I'm into history. I like political thought. Right now, I just finished Montesquieu's History of the Roman Empire. I figured if that was good enough for Jefferson to read, I want to read it.
I think everybody should read
Yeah.
I'm reading Will's. Yeah, I'm reading George Will's book, The Conservative Sensibility. I'm reading Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, which actually, if you haven't read it, it's a fantastic book. And I just finished the autobiography of Frederick Douglass. Okay. Which and I've got Sojourner Truth's biography on my next to do.
Oh wow, very good.
Yeah.
Let me just add one thing on the substance.
Yeah, absolutely,
You know,
absolutely.
There's one thing that I think we're, in addition to the backing away from field operations, I didn't think about this very much when I started. I sort of consider the chairman's race to be the chairman's position to be kind of a technician. You know, your job is to help us win elections. But the more I talk to the base and the more I engage the base, the more I realize the chairman has to be an absolute vociferous spokesman for the Republican Party of Virginia. And he really has to speak out to defend Republican values and to make our case. And that's something that I would like to do much more strongly. And unfortunately, Governor Northam makes it really easy to come up with good points.
He's a good source of entertainment sometimes.
Target-rich environment.
Yeah, I mean, you always don't know where to turn next. It's like the three-ray circus. You don't know where to look next, you know? But I think that we absolutely have to speak out from the chairman's office, because if we don't, first of all, the base thinks we don't care. And the second is the Democrats think we don't matter. Right now, since we don't control either house or the governor's mansion, frankly, the only real leverage we have is public opinion. And the 2A rally last January was a huge sign of that. I mean, that shows we're a conservative state. And that kind of energy, the RPV needs to serve as a catalyst for. We can do it. We have many like-minded organizations out there, the Family Foundation, VCDL, the Tea Parties. There are many like-minded groups out there that, you know, when I talked initially about experiences out in the war zone building coalitions, those are exactly our natural partners. And we need to make our case here, because frankly, either we define ourselves or the Democrats are going to define us for us. And they're already trying to define us as a bunch of racist misogynists. And I'm afraid it's working because we're not pushing back.
Defending, right.
And
yeah.
with all the skill and talent that we have in this organization, I don't see any reason why we couldn't mount an incredibly effective public relations campaign to defend our values, our views, and to get them out in front of people. And,
Excellent.
and as an initial step, start protecting Virginia.
Mhm.
That's an excellent
That's great.
sort of summary of all that. I agree with that. So we do want to thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
Do you have, we always ask, and then Mike will wrap up, but do we have a website or some place for people to go learn about your campaign?
Sure. My website is winrpv.com. And that so when I make shameless pleas for donations, that's where you can go. And I have a Facebook page under my name, Mike Schoelwer, M-I-K-E, just space S-C-H-O-E-L-W-E-R.
Thank you for sharing that. And with that, thank you, Mike.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Thank you again, Mike, for joining us. Really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this podcast, we invite you to watch all of our podcasts at our website, SUVGOP.com. If you go to the drop-down menu, SUVGOP's podcasts, all of them are there from this year, also from last year. There's great content there, and we encourage you to go there and visit. And also, if you're interested, please sign up for our Northern Virginia Republican Business Forum. We've got some great events, including the GOP politics event that Jill mentioned a little bit ago. SUVGOP and the forum are doing that as well. So a lot going on. Please visit the website. We'd love to see you there. And with that, thank you, Mike, for joining us. Thank you, Jill, as always.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. And we look forward to seeing you and hearing from you again on the next edition of Think Suburbia.